And we'll be talking about that later with our guests, UKIP MEP Patrick O'Flynn and the MP, the Conservative MP for South Cambridgeshire, Heidi Allen. But first, to the increasingly fractious plans for devolution in the region. Heidi Allen, it is all a bit of a mess, isn't it?
Let's try and put a positive spin on it. I'm a politician, that's what I'm supposed to do. A mess suggests it can't be sorted out. I still think there is opportunity to try and fix things.
But it's a mess at the moment.
It's a bit all over the place, yes. Principally because, as George alluded to, we have been rushed into this.
Your government has rushed councils into it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I really don't disagree with that. And I did try and convey that to ministers quite early on when I got a sense that actually, Cambridgeshire, you're going to have to join up with Suffolk and Norfolk. And I tried to explain, well, it doesn't matter if you're offering the crown jewels. Actually, if people don't feel part of the process, they're going to rebel against that.
It's put people's backs up, hasn't it? Because people think this is something that's come down from the top and they're being forced to do it.
Yeah. But, at the end of the day, however, given that there's incredible economic growth and opportunity in the Cambridgeshire region, it is right that we should try and share that to the wider region.
So what are you going to do about this? You're raising this with the government?
Yeah, absolutely.
Telling them they've got it wrong?
Well, that they need to talk to us more and they need to listen to us more because our big problems are housing. We need affordable housing here, and at the moment the deal doesn't allow us to build that. That, I think, is the kind of the crux of the matter, and if we can improve that, we might be OK.
Patrick O'Flynn, we heard George Nobbs there liken the situation to Europe. I mean, you'd like a devolution on... you'd like a referendum on devolution, wouldn't you?
Well, in terms of regional government, well, yeah, I think the only precedent we have was in the very early years of New Labour, and they offered the North East regional government a regional assembly and had a referendum on it. It was very heavily defeated. I don't think that there is a regional consciousness, or if there is, it's rather weak in East Anglia. People have an affinity with their counties. I was going to say at the opening that this is a sort of half-baked George Osborne mess all over again, and I thought I might be in trouble with Heidi if I did that, but I think she sort of said it anyway, didn't she? So I don't particularly see, and it's very ironic, isn't it, that it's a top-down imposition that they're calling devolution, and yet it's making the decision-making above a county level.
So forget the top-down thing, forget the time frame. In principle, then, you are against devolution, are you?
Well, this sort of devolution, I'm against it. I think people are loyal and recognise their counties, their cities. We're not talking about London or Greater Manchester, are we? We're talking about, an area with towns and large rural expanses. And the main crux of the issue, as Heidi said, is housing and transport. And a lot of that has to do with resources. And at what level you get your local bods sitting around tables doesn't really cure that. So,
Heidi, you recognise that there are serious problems, but in principle, are you for devolution?
Devolution, absolutely. Is Suffolk, Norfolk, Cambridgeshire the right area? I think the jury's still out on that. And I agree, people do recognise their own county. That being said, transport-wise, that A14 corridor does kind of have a natural fit. And it's possible... Joe Churchill, the Bury St Edmunds MP, put it beautifully to me, actually. Heidi, let us service your area. You've got this beating heart of an economy. We'll take the houses, we'll take the roads and share the pressure that we're feeling here. And we do need to release some of that pressure in Cambridgeshire. So I think there is potential in that regard.
More from both of you in just a minute. And if you think there's lots of disagreement around devolution, you ain't seen nothing yet. The EU referendum may be 73 days away, but the debate continues to dominate the political agenda. And for one group in particular, the arguments are particularly personal. More than 100,000 people from this region are living abroad. So we sent Andrea Sinclair to a rainy Spain to hear the concerns of the expat community there. Patrick O'Flynn, you're potentially going to leave these people with poorer pensions, worse health care and having to sell their homes in a property crash if they have to come back home.
Not at all. I think that's complete scaremongering. Their property rights are protected under the Vienna Convention. There's no supposition from anyone who's calling for Brexit at all that we would take any action against EU citizens who are here and who came here legally. There is no reason to suppose that, for instance, in Spain, our people living there are overwhelmingly occupational pensioners taking money out of Britain and spending it in the local economy in Spain. And you probably know the Spanish economy economy really needs that. I happen to know one of the fastest growing expat communities in Spain are Russians. Last time I looked, Russia wasn't in the European Union. So these scare stories are ridiculous. But in the end, I will also make this point. You cannot take decisions about what's in the interests of a country, i.e. Britain, purely on the basis of the preferences of citizens who've chosen to go and live in another country.
OK, then that's an interesting point. Heidi Allen, do these people matter? I mean, we are talking about 2 million British citizens here, yet they've not really been mentioned in this debate at all, have they? Do they matter?
No, and it's funny, well, of course they matter. When I was thinking about how I'd answer this question, my sort of initial reaction is a little bit, I think, along your lines, Patrick. Well, if you've chosen to live somewhere else, why suddenly do you have a right about how to vote in a UK election? But then the more I thought about it, well, actually, you've been allowed to go to Europe because of this European arrangement of free movement. So if that were to change, then by right you should have the ability to give your opinion on that.
I think most of them do, don't they? The ones who've been...
Only under 15 years.
Under 15 years, yes.
I think the argument is those that have been there for longer than 15, that they have lost that right. And although in the Conservative manifesto we've said that we will change that and it'll be votes for life, we're not there yet, and that legislation isn't in place in time for the referendum. And I think that's probably people's major beef. Those that have been there for less than 15 years, they can vote, and that's fine.
But Patrick O'Flynn, people had real concerns there, and health is a real concern, isn't it? I mean, that would change.
Well, the healthcare thing is very interesting. I think it was the Labour MP John Mann recently unearthed some official figures to show that with the NHS, we run an enormous deficit with the other European healthcare schemes because of the reciprocal rights and the way the NHS works and is very open with no upfront fees
but
at all.
They wouldn't have the same health access,
but
would they?
it would mean, were we to withdraw from the European Union, there would be a massive sudden surplus of money. So the government could afford quite easily to put together a scheme to cover our expats. We could even see NHS clinics opening in Spain for British expats.
Can you see that? Genuinely, can you see that?
Well, I can see there's a lot more money that the NHS would no longer be losing. It would be a financial gain. We could afford to enter into sensible reciprocal deals at the very least.
Well, I suppose that all hinges on whether you believe that financially we're better off in or out, I suppose. You know, my view is the opposite to yours, of course, and I'm not sure you can guarantee all this surplus cash sloshing around. But whichever side of the argument you come down, and one thing does remain, it is uncertain for them. Well, you know, we don't know exactly how things will pan out.
And it's actually uncertain. I mean, this is the big problem with this debate, isn't it? Nobody actually knows. Patrick O'Flynn, you don't know either.
There's uncertainty in life. Just getting out of bed in the morning and going out to do a job is all kinds of uncertainties. I would say there's an uncertainty about what the EU will look like if we stay in, and that's very dangerous.
One sentence from both of you then. Patrick O'Flynn, why would the East benefit from getting out? One sentence, main benefit.
We would be freer, we would have our own employment rights, we could run our own affairs, we'd be more democratic, and we would save £10 billion a year, or our
Quite
share
a long
of
sentence.
it.
Slightly shorter one from you, Heidi Allen.
I think science, technology, universities, agriculture, international trade, no-brainer, have to stay in.
All right. Heidi Allen, Uniting Care, I mean, a damning report there.
Yes. Essentially, I think the structure was what failed. The governing structure is what went wrong. The theory and the principle behind what we were trying to achieve, absolutely right. And actually, funnily enough, that's still continuing. But what's disappointing is the money that's been wasted in the process.
Absolutely right?
Yes. Yes,
Patrick Flynn, absolutely right. I mean, do you want to see more of these contracts?
Well, I think it's a case, it's a bit like the devolution argument, where a newfangled scheme which looks good on paper doesn't turn out to be so good when implemented. So I would use conservative with a small c. I'd have a small c conservative approach to some of these big bureaucratic changes, because quite often they go wrong.
Thing, though, they weren't actually bureaucratic. The same organisations, the same staff are still in place. It was the management structure that failed.
Patrick O'Flynn, what about Nigel Farage's comments about, you know, supporting an American-style system?
What, in respect
when it comes to healthcare?
Well, look, we had a debate in UKIP, and the people who believe in the NHS overwhelmingly won that debate.
Now? Where does UKIP stand on that?
Well, as in our election manifesto, we were going to use £3 billion of the net savings from leaving the EU to increase resources fully funded for the NHS. We're 100% for the NHS. I'm personally 100% for the NHS. The idea that some kind of private insurance system could take care of healthcare in 21st century Britain is for the birds. They can't even compensate homeowners whose homes get flooded.
All right. Heidi Allen and Patrick O'Flynn, thank you both very much indeed. Well, that's all for now.